Shout out to G-Man Boxing. Where's the piss bottle? It's over there.
Billy Joe Saunders gave his first interview with TalkSport since his first career loss at the hands of Canelo Alvarez. It's interesting. He touched on his injury. He said that he obviously had serious damage to his eye. He had a broken jaw, stuff like that. He had surgery. Give him my 2 cents on all that in other videos. I won't touch on that. I'm going to touch on what he says about possibly contemplating retirement. He's basically alluding to the fact, I'm going to read a quote here now in a sec, but he's basically alluding to the fact that fight with Canelo was huge, right? It was 70-odd thousand in, I think it was Arlington, Texas. It was a massive event. There was a lot on, right? It was just one of those once-in-a-lifetime events that Billy Joe was part of. He's kind of almost insinuating, if he does fight again, how do you top that? And I think I even said that in one of my videos after that, like maybe Billy Joe would look and think, even if I want to fight again, how do I get... Because Billy Joe, we know, has struggled with motivation for fights in the past. We know that certain fights like Martin Murray, he's really kind of, although he's won, he's performed flat because, a bit like Tyson Fury, how do you get up for that? When you've had the biggest event of your career, how are you going to get up for future ones? He's also gone on to, I'm going to quote him here, he says that his dad will have a big say on whether he continues or not. He said it's 50-50 whether I think I'll have another one, maybe a couple of fights. Got to be the right fights. If he says, leave it, son, that's probably what I'll do. He's referring there to Tom Saunders. He's saying one or maybe a couple of fights. You would imagine possibly Eubank Jr. rematch, Callum Smith, someone like that, a big fight domestically. And kind of fights like that, fights that are going to generate a lot of money, that are big names, and that would probably give Billy Joe the fire in his belly. But of course, he's saying if his dad says leave it, then that's what he's going to do. I've said it for a while that I think even prior to Canelo, even I think as far back as January last year, I said that Billy Joe, it seems though the hunger for boxing has been gone for a while. It seems as though Billy Joe, and I said this, I said although I'm sure he'll come to win against Canelo, he'll come to try and, win that fight. He's not going to go in there just for a paycheck. Billy Joe was probably thinking of, lads' holidays, spending time with his kids, rather than, will he be fighting in 2 or 3 years' time. So to hear him talk about retirement, it doesn't surprise me personally, and we'll just need to see what he does. He's also touched on, basically, I'm going to quote him here. He says, I wanted to go on. So he's saying he wanted to go on against Canelo. I could hear Ben Davison, obviously, telling me it was over. I was shaking my head to say, no way. I'm willing to put down the life. Never would I say, nah, I'm finished, I'm done. So that's what Billy Joe was saying with regards, what happened in the fight. Now, I've given my 2 cents on this already, but what I will say is that the way it was handled from the media, you had Mark Tibbs saying one thing, you had Ben Davison saying another, you had Mark Tibbs saying to Ben Davison, what the hell. There's been a lot of stuff said. Alright, there's been a hell of a lot of stuff said. I felt that the way specifically IFL handled it was absolutely disgraceful, because you had Daniel Dubois, and I've said it once, I'll say it again, Daniel Dubois, who quit against Joe Joyce, right? They interviewed Joe Joyce's own mother, they interviewed everyone they could speak of, and as Coogan said himself, well, I'm a journalist. And then when people grilled him about Billy Joe, why aren't you doing the same treatment? Oh, well, I'm not a journalist. Absolutely disgraceful from Coogan. But of course, that's IFL. That's IFL. I mean, who sponsors IFL at the end of the day? Who are they in association with? But in terms of that, that's what he's going on with what Ben Davison said there. It'd be interesting to know what his relationship with Mark Tibbs is like. So if Billy Joe does decide to have a fight again, will he have Mark Tibbs in his corner, or will he have Ben Davison in his corner? Has he spoken with Mark Tibbs since the Canelo fight? Because at the end of the day, say whatever you want to say about what the situation, you can't not tell me there's been a lot of contradictory reports from certain people inside Team Saunders. You'd have Mark Tibbs saying one thing, you'd Ben Davison saying another. And again, the way, people like IFL handled it, where, it was treatment for one fighter, it wasn't for the other. That to me wasn't good. That wasn't on. As I said, where was the interview? And look, at the end of the day, it's gone now. It's been and gone. It's happened a month ago. But still, you have to look at it from a point of objectivity. You're going to do it for one fighter. Why aren't you doing it for another? But That's what Billy Joe Saunders says there. In terms of his retirement, we're going to focus this more so on the retirement thing. In terms of him retiring, I would say that Billy Joe has... He's done a lot in his career. I'm not going to take that away from him. He absolutely has. 2-weight world champion. I think that there was more there. I think we could have been talking to Billy Joe as a 3-weight world champion, because I think that early on, I think he even said it himself, that if he'd really tried, he should really have started at 154 pounds. Personally, I think he would have been very good at that weight. You know, I think his speed would have been there. I think Billy Joe was not feather fisted. I think at that weight, maybe his punches would have had a bit more authority on him. So I think we could have had a 3-weight world champion. Personally, I think that Billy Joe, someone with his talent, and Billy Joe is immensely talented. He's a very, very skillful, very talented fighter. Make no mistake about that. Absolutely. Anyone says he's not, no, he is. He's a very, very talented fighter. Always has been. I think the problem with Billy Joe is that at times he's blown up in between fights, and you know, he's had to take an awful lot of weight off just to get down to middleweight, and it's resulted in him having poor performances, sluggish performances. I think he rises to the occasion of the event more so than he does the opponent. So you could put him in there against someone like Martin Murray. You know, obviously there was no crowds in that fight, but it's a very kind of meh workman-like performance. You put him in there against someone like David Lemieux, who was not, even at the time, was not one of the best middleweights in the world, but the event, you know, the fact that he was going into the Lions Den, he was able to produce a great performance. It had to be said, stylistically, Lemieux was tailor-made for Billy Joe, I accept that, but still, Billy Joe was able to rise to the occasion. I think that's one thing that him and his friend Tyson Fury have done in the past, is that they sometimes bring themselves to the level of the opponent. You know, look at Otto Wallin. You know, Wallin's not a bad fighter, make no mistake about that, but Tyson Fury, to go from that to what he did to Deontay Wilder, it shows kind of how he viewed both fighters respectively. You know, he obviously viewed Otto Wallin as kind of, this is just another knockover job. Became harder. I'm sure if we had a focused Tyson Fury, the same Fury we had in the Wilder rematch, might not have even got the cut, might have been able to get Otto Wallin out of there. But he was able to go from that straight to Deontay Wilder, and different story altogether. Whereas at Billy Joe, you know, you look at Akabov when he fought him, you know, and he looked terrible. To go from that, I know we had the Willie Monroe fight in between, to be fair, but to go from that to David Lemieux to looking just razor sharp, you know, that's kind of Billy Joe Saunders in a nutshell. He's had fights where he's looked amazing, and then he'll have other fights where he looks flat. You know, a bit like that fight over in the Logan Paul KSI undercard. You know, and he was having a rough time in that fight. So that's my thoughts on Billy Joe. As I said, 2-weight world champion. Can't take that away from excellent achievement. The names there, though. I mean, the names he has are good, don't get me wrong. You know, Eubank Jr., John Ryder, Andy Lee, David Lemieux, Willie Monroe. Good fighters. You know, they are good fighters. But Demetrius Andre, would have loved to have seen that fight. It would have been a good fight. And Demetrius Andre is a good name, right? He is. Triple G, you know, I think there was issues more so on Triple G's part more so with that, because I think they wanted to do that fight in Kazakhstan, but ended up fighting Canelo. Things like that. The marquee names, you know, Canelo is the marquee name on his resume, and that was a loss. But I haven't said that. Look, I always like Billy Joe. I know some people don't. Me personally, I knew he could do silly things, and he has done silly things outside the ring, obviously, like the crackhead thing. But I've always kind of had a bit of, I don't know why, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Billy Joe. I've always liked him. You know, as a fighter, he can be a bit, you know, boring at times, but I've always watched him. I've always, you know, found him entertaining. So I don't know, if he's retiring, so be it. If not, we'll need to watch this space and see who he fights next. For now, I'm going to leave it here. Hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button, let me know your thoughts. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. #GMansRocks, all that good stuff. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Peace.